Hey gang, it's AZ with the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. Today I had so much fun. I sat down with my friend Christina Montalvo in my kitchen. We recorded live. We actually recorded 2 episodes, one for my podcast and one for her podcast. So Christina Montalvo is a strength coach. She's an entrepreneur. She has a dog named Mac. I'm obsessed with Mac. And I call her the tiny dynamo because I know I'm tall, but I am a foot taller than Christina. It's amazing. When we take pictures together, it's so amazing. I love it. But Christina was invited on the podcast because she has such valuable insight into a lot of things, training and performance, but especially about dieting and how we feel about our bodies. And she just has a really good philosophy on eating and nutrition and weight loss and all of the things. And so I know you're going to love this episode. And also head on over to Christina's podcast. It's called The Confidence Project. It's amazing. So enjoy. And thank you, as always, for listening. Thank you for joining me on the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, AZ. I find the research and resources and then provide the fire service with the so what, now what, to ensure the health and well-being of every member of our profession. Together, let's thrive. Hey, podcast listeners, it's AZ, and I am very excited because today I am sitting in my kitchen with my friend Christina Montalvo. Christina, say hello to my listeners.
Hello, everyone.
Oh my gosh, Christina and I have been friends for a hot minute. It's kind of funny. We became friends over a course, and that course, you're going to be shocked, was a Shantae Cofield course called Moving with the Maestro. And it was really cool. I hosted it at my fire department. And so she's a tiny dynamo. I love this woman. But before I just keep talking, why don't you tell the listeners, who is Christina Montalvo?
I already said this before we started hitting record. You start with the hard questions. Who is Christina Montalvo? Christina Montalvo is a serial entrepreneur. I'm a rescue dog mom to a pitty named Mac. What else am I, Annette? What aren't I?
I know, that's the thing. And we are recording at my house because Christina was afraid that Mac was going to be disruptive. But here's the funny thing. I offered Christina a sparkling water. She picked one. I went to put the rest of them away, and I exploded one on my floor. So I think we would have been better off with Mac.
I don't know. Tough call. Could have gone one of two ways.
One of two ways. And here's the thing. She dove in with the paper towels, and it's all cleaned up. But yeah, this is Christina's maiden voyage to my house. Christina, I would say if I had to add anything, I would just have to say that you are a very deep thinker.
Mm-hmm.
You are. I actually reached out to you. I think it was last summer or the summer before?
Last summer.
I was having, a personal issue. And I just thought, who can I talk to about this? And I was like, boom, Christina. And she came through. And we had ceviche. So
we did.
It was a whole thing.
Thank you for saying that I'm a deep thinker. I am a deep thinker.
You are.
Yeah, I think it's important.
It is. And you know what the other thing you are? You're no bullshit. Because what I love about you is that you run an extraordinarily successful business, but you're very transparent about it. Yeah, I could go on there and say I had a $10,000, $20,000 month, but what does that really mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you're a deep thinker and you're a very reasonable woman.
Oh, thank you.
Anything else to add now, though?
I think, like you said, just very direct. Being direct is a love language. No one has to wonder if what you're saying is true or if you mean it. That, I think, is who Christina is. What you see is what you get.
You never have to wonder.
You got it,
Christina.
You got it.
All right. Next hard question. What sets your soul on fire?
Man, freedom and autonomy. If I get to make a decision and be self-governed, I make my own rules, that sets my soul on fire.
Can you elaborate on that just a little bit? What exactly does that mean?
Like, I think especially as being a woman and being in the fitness industry, which you get, like, you work in a male dominated space, like being a very small woman in a male dominated fitness industry, like there's all these rules and expectations and pressures, and those are all outside of me. And but what sets my soul on fire is being the opposite of those things, being self-governed. So like I decide what feels good for me. I decide what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, when I'm going to do it. I make the rules in my life. Like outside expectations, outside rules, like no thank you.
0 F's given.
Just can't do it.
I love that so much. Funny side note. I went a few years in a row to Summer Strong. Do you have like any concept? Does that mean anything to you?
No.
Okay. So Summer Strong is an event that was actually created by the Sorinex exercise company. And it's kind of like a conference, but it's basically they bring in strength and conditioning coaches, super inspirational people to speak. And then like 400 or 500 strength and conditioning coaches make this mecca to South Carolina. And when you fly into the airport, there's literally signs up that say, "Welcome to Summer Strong." And the people are getting off the airplane and they're greeting each other like, "Hey, bro. Hey, coach." And I was like, why isn't anyone greeting me? It's because I don't look like the rest of them. They all have like beards down to their chest, bald heads. And there's just the assumption that they're a coach it's so crazy.
Right. That's a rule. That's an expectation. That's like you fit into this box.
Yeah.
And what sets my soul on fire is like, I don't want to be in your box. I'm going to build my own box. And I say what goes in this box.
Oh my God.
You know?
I love it. I'm fired up now. Fired up. All right. Last hard question. How are you changing the world?
Oh my gosh. I think I'm changing the world by teaching what elements of what I just said to other women. Yes. I work primarily with women. Only with women, really. And I think I'm changing the world by helping other women uncage themselves, right? Like we're in these boxes that we don't want to be in and we don't like they don't work for us. And I'm talking, I know it sounds arbitrary, but even like, are you allowed to leave your house without makeup on as a woman? I'm like, yes, I can if I want to. So giving women that frame of like you're self-governed, it's your rules, it's your life. I think that changes the world because could you imagine all of these women in the world becoming self-governed, like, and look at the way we cleaned up the kitchen.
Right. We just
look how women are. If you can give women their own power back, I think that changes a lot.
I love that. And right now the listeners are probably going, Annette, okay, like cool. This is all cool, but
get to the point.
No. Well, our listeners are primarily men. And so why would I talk to Christina? Well, here's the reason why. She has some really, really important and impactful information that I think impacts men, and men may not even consciously know it. And so one of the things that drew me to Christina initially was her sparkling personality. But I mean, like speaking, we're having a party here in the afternoon with LaCroix drinks and Polar drinks. So we're partiers. But the other thing that drew me to her is the fact that she talks a lot about this thing called diet culture. And I've always known that I felt some sort of way about weight loss and personal training. I felt some sort of way about it, but it wasn't really clear to me what was going on. And so first of all, let's start unpacking. Christina, what in the actual hell does diet culture, what does that even mean?
I love this question. Years ago, it meant something different than it means now, which is primarily due to social media influence. Like social media is this really big game of telephone. So by the time there's a mainstream message on something like Instagram, it's like, ooh, we're a little far away from how this whole thing started. So that I think is really important for the listeners to know. Like depending on the type of content or what you're listening to, you might get different flavors of this. In my mind, the way that I define diet culture, it's a priority given to what your body looks like over what it feels like. So diet culture in a more general sense is, weight loss over everything else. what we look like. I know that there's a lot of men listening, but for women, diet culture says that we need to be smaller and thinner. And that can show up in a lot of different ways. Women feel shame because they're too bulky now. Even on the muscle side of things, diet culture will say, well, you're not sexy enough. Diet culture certainly will show up for men also, and it's everyday men that don't look like the cover of a magazine. And that becomes the gold standard. If I don't have a six-pack, if I'm not shredded and jacked and like slippery and tan,
Ooh, slippery,
then I'm doing something wrong. And the pursuit of trying to look a certain way often knocks us off track to what makes our bodies actually feel good.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I can relate because I think it was around 2010. I just decided that I no longer wanted to govern my programming. I wanted to outsource it, and I wanted to present a package to the world that looked different. And so two things happened with that. The first one was I worked really hard with a coach, and the other patrons at the place more than once would say, wow, you look really great, but don't get too big. So then my own personal goal of becoming more muscular, more lean, whatever it was, they sort of discounted what I wanted. And so I was always chasing this not good enough. Now with men, like you said, slippery and tan, six-pack and all of that, I think that it can also show up as sort of a pressure in the fire service, a pressure to do what everyone else is doing. So if keto is the current thing, then there's pressure for everyone to do keto. If low carb, whatever, is the current thing, there's pressure for everyone to do that. Do you see that with your female clients too?
Yes. And this comes back to that box that we referenced, right? Keto is this box, and becoming self-governed would be, okay, fine. You want to try keto, go ahead and try it. Diet culture suggests if you're losing weight, it's working. No other questions asked. I think that's silly. Your body is giving you feedback all the time in metrics beyond measurements, body composition, scale weight, etc. Getting outside of the box would say, does this work for me? Beyond the generic label of, yes, you will lose weight. Most people who do keto end up feeling like shit. Hello, that's plenty of information. That's data from your body. Like, we don't feel good on keto.
We don't feel good.
That references that box of like, you build your own box, right? To answer your question though, do I see women doing these extreme diets and whatever? Not so much the clients I work with anymore in a paid capacity, because we don't really touch that stuff inside my strength and conditioning programs. But yes, wild different ideas of eating, whether it's keto or intermittent fasting or whatever.
Or all of it together.
Oh my God, yeah.
I'm
certainly.
intermittent fasting, but I'm also following keto.
There's also, I mean, we've seen it all. I'm doing keto, intermittent fasting, and I'm tracking my macros. Like, that's a lot of thinking just to eat, my love. That's a lot of thinking just to eat. And my argument with that is we are born knowing how to eat.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that.
Like, you don't, to some degree, it's not that challenging. What makes it challenging, again, we go back to these arbitrary rules driven by diet culture, this pursuit of, at least for women, but again, men, we talked about that, needing to look smaller. For men, it's bigger, more muscular, whatever. We still haven't talked about health, though. Like, there is this element of, okay, you look good, but are you healthy? And that requires more than weighing in. Like, do you have a blood test taken? Like, what's happening underneath the hood? What are the actual biomarkers that we're using to decide, is this working beyond, I lost 10 pounds?
Are you super tired and can't get out of bed?
Yeah. How's your recovery from your training, from your workouts? How are your hormone levels doing? I mean, the female body has a certain way of telling us how our hormones are doing. And men, like, your body's probably telling you too. Sex drive's a big one. Sex drive is a big one. You might be lean as hell, but you don't want to have sex anymore. So who's even benefiting from you looking good? You don't even want to do it anymore. Right? So there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that comes up.
You said you are born knowing how to eat, which leads me down the path of, I've heard you say this on your podcast, The Confidence Project, a couple of times. We are wild animals. And if we would just act a little bit more like wild animals, we'd be a lot better off. You're going to explain that so much better than I am. So tell the listeners what you're talking about when you say we are wild animals.
This came to me at a very dark time in my life, Annette. I tell you, I was like deep in a really bad depression, and the only thing that made me feel better was watching wild animal documentaries, okay? So, I'm in it. And this one particular series was all about the female wild, they were all like cats. It was like lions and leopards and whatever.
Goddamn cheetahs.
Yep, yes.
Okay.
Yes. All these big female cats, and they're badass females. They're like big and dangerous, and they do the most in the wild.
Yes.
And through this, I'm like, where did we learn that like the female, like humans are these like weak and meek and useless creatures? And part of me, because I always kind of try to bring things back to diet culture, it's kind of that. Diet culture also enforces this message that, again, like our worth is based on, as a woman, different than men, but still the same concept. Our worth as a woman is based on how small and cute and dainty we are. That doesn't exist in biological nature. It's not happening. So all these female lions, let's say, they're out there and their number one concern is food. It is their number one biological drive. And this like British narrator is like, the mama lion's only concern is to go out and eat as much food as possible and to feed her cubs. If you're a woman in the world, it's like eat nothing and this is how you lose weight and this is how you eat less. And a large part of all of our nutrition issues happen as a compensatory response to not eating enough. So in the body of a mammal, very interesting things start happening without the presence of enough food. And it's never a good thing. Have you ever seen a skinny polar bear and thought, wow, that polar bear looks so good.
I wish they'd shave so I could see their abs.
Yeah, you see a skinny polar bear and you're like, holy shit, somebody feed it right now.
It's going to die.
It's going to die. We mix this in with beauty culture, of course. And again, like these pressures and we as humans want to fit in. We want to feel included. We want to feel important. And that tends to get done through the lens of what we look like. And still, we're never doing things through what actually helps me. What helps me do my job? What helps me get through my day? How much energy do I need for the day? We have so many people that are trying to lose weight and be good, so they eat less food, but less food means less energy. And so then you're tired. So then you skip your workout because you're tired. And well, now you feel fat because you skipped your workout. So now you eat less again. And then it just round and round and round and round we go. So a mammal, in my mind, does not do well with intentionally eating less food. Less food's never the answer.
And I can verify that the best I ever looked was the worst I ever felt.
Ooh, say it again.
The best I ever looked was the worst I ever felt. And I was trying, it was around that same time that I was working with the coach. And I thought I should do, I'm super motivated and dedicated and adherent to this program. Obviously, I should do a show. Okay.
Obviously.
Christina, I'm 5'9.5". It is impossible for me to put on good muscle mass. When I lose weight, I just look skinny. And so now I'm fighting to try to look like I have muscle and I look skinny. I'm not eating enough and I'm tired and I'm not performing at work. The best I ever looked was the worst I ever felt. I want to go back to, you said a lot of our nutrition problems come from not eating enough. And I think it was an Instagram post you talked about the answer is sometimes eating more. Riff on that for a little bit.
Okay. The answer is almost always eat more. This freaks a lot of people out because the number one answer to all of our problems is always eat less. I think it's important to say here that dieting advice is very different than nutrition advice. And not knowing which side of the line you kind of fall on as a consumer when you're trying to figure out what information do I need I think knowing that is really helpful. Is this nutrition advice or is this diet advice? Those are two different things. The way that we define what eat more looks like is the most important. So to the untrained ear, eat more may sound like, or may be interpreted as just eat more potato chips.
More.
Just eat more of that. What I actually mean by eat more comes into the framework. There's this framework that I introduced to my client. It's really not that magical of a framework, but eating more, when you hear me say that, means at every single one of your meals, let's go for 90% consistency, compliance here. That's like a pretty good target. Carbs, protein, produce, something to make it taste good. Typically a fat source, but I like people to start enjoying the way that they eat. So in place of naming all the macronutrients, fat source, fat tastes good. Like on some level, you want your food to taste good. So eating more isn't, okay, I'm going to eat more Cheetos. It might be, okay, Cheetos, we could argue that they're a fat source or a carb source. Pick one. Let's call it a carb source. Fine. You don't have enough at that snack. You need more. So you need a protein source. What did we say that we had? Carbs. Let's add some produce. And to be honest, if you're eating Flaming Hot Cheetos, you got enough taste good. So can we add more to our meals? Like if you're just having a bowl of cereal for breakfast, the answer isn't always just stop eating cereal. All you had was a bowl of carbs. Okay, now you need some protein, you need some produce, and you need something to make it taste good. So that is what I mean by eat more. It's not eat the whole box of cereal for breakfast. It's add more variety into that eating.
Add more of the quote unquote, I don't like the word good versus bad, but we'll use it just loosely. Add more of the good stuff to it's going to keep you full for longer.
100%.
Because let's be honest, you eat a bowl of Cheerios, you're going to be hungry, me, in 30 minutes.
100%. Me too. Every time.
30 minutes. And so if we add to that whatever, like you said, protein, produce, and something to make it taste good, because let's be honest, they also taste like a goat's butthole. So then we actually have a full meal.
Yes.
And so I was telling Christina prior to recording and also prior to spilling the sparkling water all over my floor, I was saying that I'd had a couple dietitians on that work exclusively in fire, and they both gave the same message, which is we overcomplicate things so much. And so let's keep going down that path of protein, produce, carb, and something to make it taste good. Christina put together for me a lunch and a dinner. Just what, like, play Chopped. What would you put together? What would taste good to you today?
Gosh, I'll actually give you an example of what I had for dinner last night. Can I do this out of order?
Absolutely.
I was so tired last night, Annette. I was like, I don't want to make anything. I didn't want to do it. So I had some like lunch meat ham. That was my protein. Not perfect. It's not perfect,
no.
But I'm like, it's got to be something. So what's my protein source? Sliced lunch meat. I had like a slice of, maybe 2 slices of cheese. I had a handful of chips, and then a 2 handfuls of cherry tomatoes. It's like, and my husband came home, Mike, and he's like, you are just a walking charcuterie board. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. And I know that I answered your question out of order. But that was my dinner last night. And to your point, like if we're hitting all these macronutrients without overcomplicating it, I'm going to regulate my blood sugar, which is going to help eliminate an issue in the future, depending on, I'm not talking necessarily about if you have full-blown type 2 diabetes, but blood sugar regulation is a big part of hunger control. The way when we pair certain foods with certain foods, especially carbs, protein, produce, something to make it taste good, in a way, we are managing our blood sugar in the future, which is helpful.
And so most people, I would guess, in your situation would have done one of 2 things. Given up and called for a pizza.
Yes.
Or seen the lunch meat, seen the cheese, thought sandwich and chips. And so now we're missing that produce, which is going to, like you said, help with regulation of blood sugar and also with keeping someone full and the micronutrients.
And produce also digestion. Like we're going to make sure you can poop.
Oh my God, Christina, we're on poop now. This is, oh my gosh.
Can we talk about poop? I can talk about poop all day.
No, Megan Lautz, the rescue RD, came on and she reminded us of the fiber requirements for health, around 35 grams, average for the male, around 25 for female. And she said her typical firefighter gets 5.
Oh, you ain't pooping.
No. And then they want to take Metamucil.
Oof.
Let's sit with this for a second. It is very important. Your body doesn't need a detox program. It doesn't need a tea. It doesn't need a cabbage soup diet. It doesn't need a detox program. But it does need to poop.
Yeah. And it shouldn't hurt.
And it shouldn't hurt.
Like your poop shouldn't hurt.
Your poop. Say that one more time.
Your poop shouldn't hurt.
That's going to probably be the quote for the podcast. Sorry. But
no, yeah, like feel good poops.
Yeah. If you're not getting enough fiber, you're not pooping efficiently.
Correct.
Okay.
So now you can see even the way that we're discussing food, the nutrition side of food minus the diet side of food, we are now using your own body as the reference point. Like when you go poop, turn around and look at your poop. It's literally going to tell you what just happened, what is happening in your digestive tract. So instead of using outside rules, we're going back to your box for yourself, and of which your poop is your report card. It's self-governed, but it really is.
So your poop looks like little rabbit pebbles.
We got a problem. Yeah.
Your poop looks like fluffy, floaty, bubbly mess. We got a problem.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Relatively smooth,
like a sausage link with some bumps. We can have variation in our poop slightly, but yeah, you shouldn't have to be pushing it out super hard. It shouldn't be rabbit pellet-ish. And it shouldn't it's not like a chunk of clay.
Oh gosh.
But if you're not putting good things in, you're not going to get good things out. Mm-hmm. Produce is one of those.
Things. Okay, I love your charcuterie board. What did you have for lunch?
I'll tell what I had for lunch today was actually 2 slices of toast as I was in a rush. So I think context is important. This style of eating helps me feed myself well, no matter the circumstance. So I don't need I don't need a bunch of time. You can kind of grab and go. So today for lunch, I had cottage cheese, which was my protein, 2 slices of toast, which were my carbohydrates, strawberries, and that was it. I use 4% cottage cheese. So there was fat.
Okay.
In there. So it sounds like a weird small lunch, but it works for me. I know when I'm going to be back home to get hungry again or whatever. So it really is just this framework. And do I have a protein? Yes. Okay. Let's move on. Yep.
Move on.
Yep.
And I think you taught me about this, and I don't know if you got it somewhere else. The concept of future me, is that your thing, or did you get that somewhere else?
I think that's a me thing. I'm sure other people say that too, but that was a me thing.
Okay. Tell the listeners how you apply the concept of do a favor for future you when it comes to food specifically.
Okay. So I used to be the world's best dieter, similar to you. I was really compliant. I could follow all the rules, no bullshit, no deviance at all. And I was applauded for it. Everyone's like, you look amazing. And I was like a crazy person about it. Because of that experience, what I know now is I don't like to be hungry. First of all, I'm a bitch. I'm super bitchy if I'm hungry, but I also don't necessarily, none of us make sound nutrition choices when we are too far gone. It's actually called primal hunger. It's a biological innate thing that we all have, like the wild animals that we are. If you are too far gone, you're really hungry. You've all done this. Do you ever feel like you can't stop yourself? You feel out of control? That's not necessarily a binge so much as you are way too far gone. You're way too hungry. It can lead to a binge, though, of course. I don't like feeling like that. At the height of my dieting days, you could ignore your hunger for a very long time. That always led to me overeating and then guilt and whatever. So I'm very sensitive to feeling hungry. So I always make sure that I have components on hand. I call these meal components. So for my future self, it's usually every Sunday or Monday. It's not meal prep, it's food component prep. So I'm like, okay, what carbs do I want to eat this week? Rice and potatoes? Great. I'll pre-make a bunch of rice. I'll pre-make a bunch of potatoes. And they might even be mashed potatoes. I'm not boiling a plain ass potato and eating it dry.
Gross.
Gross. Also, if I am, I'm going to add stuff to make it taste good. So you bet your sweet ass there's like sour cream and butter happening. That's part of it. So I'll pre-make my carbohydrate components. Same thing for protein. What protein components do I want to have? That might even mean making sure I always have cans of chicken or cans of tuna on hand for those days when you don't have the time or whatever. But that is how I grocery shop. Like, do I have all these elements that I need? That's how I prep the components. And then throughout the week, because I work from home, I just get to grab and go. I grab the chicken breast that I made. I grab the, whatever it is, a cup of the mashed potatoes. I always have fresh produce. Sometimes I'll make the produce, especially in the winter. Like the soups and the stews and stuff makes more sense in the winter. That way I'm never screwing my future self over. I'm almost never doing something for myself in the moment. I'm always making sure I'm not screwing myself later in the week. I think we all have to be like that. Like, I have to have my own back. This is one way that I have my own back.
And that's kind of the concept that I talked about on the Spring for Change Nutrition Week summary. You can have the best intentions in the world. You can have defrosted chicken breasts and you can have broccoli in the fridge and you can have all of those things. But if your kid's soccer game goes into overtime and now it's 7:30, guess what? You're not going to be wanting to make chicken breasts and broccoli. But if they're already made in your refrigerator, more likely that you're going to eat it.
And I also want to say, like, here's another way to your point. Let's say the soccer game goes over and you are like up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. You can still navigate unideal situations with this framework.
Tell me more.
So, I don't know, name a restaurant or like a fast food place. Panera. Okay, well, if I go, I love Panera. This is a great example. If I go into Panera and I get a soup and a bread bowl, I had no protein. Every once in a while, that's going to be a fine decision. If I have the flu, I'm for sure getting soup in a bread bowl.
French onion.
Broccoli cheddar.
Okay, continue.
If it's a one-off situation, I'm sick, I'm going to get the bread bowl. If it's my lunch and I know I have to go a certain amount of time, or I might have a workout coming up or I'm busy, that protein is going to give me a certain amount of staying power. So I would be remiss to go to Panera and get a soup and a bread bowl with no protein element. That's missing that component. So I'm going to use that in my decision making here. So I'm going to say, okay, I need a protein option with this. Well, I'm not going to get the bread bowl. First of all, I don't need a whole fucking bread. Like, why?
That's a lot of bread.
It's a lot of bread. I'm going to maybe get the salad with chicken. I'm going to check off the produce and the protein. There's probably a baguette going to get served with that. There's my carbohydrate. What's left? Tastes good?
Yeah, tastes good.
There's cheese and full fats and nuts and whatever. That's what I'm going for. If I'm going to get the bread bowl, if you're like, I need to get the bread bowl.
I'm getting it.
Then also figure out how to get a side of protein in there. Maybe you bring a protein shake.
Perfect.
I do that shit all the time. Like in the car on the way, like protein shake to fill it in because it didn't happen at the meal. We got to get it in somehow, though. So you can have the soccer game go over, end up at Panera, and still use this framework to make sure you're giving your body what it needs.
And listeners, are you hearing how well this would apply to? Because we shop every day.
Oh, every day.
For lunch and dinner.
Okay.
We shop for the number of people that are at the station. And so a lot of times there's sort of like paralysis analysis. What are we going to make? And it's a big fancy meal. But if you can simplify it to protein, produce, carb, and something to make it taste good, you got it.
That's a super easy way to shop for them then, for sure. You go to the store with those categories. What's the protein that we have to buy? What's the produce? Yeah, super streamlined.
I love it. So I want to be respectful of your time, but I want to go down one more rabbit hole if you're willing.
Of course.
Okay. You recently talked, posted, podcasted. Hell, I don't know. I follow you on a lot of different stuff. And by the way, if you are not following Ms. Montalvo, I will put her Instagram in the show notes and also her podcast. But you talked about you want clients to be in a certain, it wasn't mind frame or frame of mind. It was a certain place before you want to work with them on fat loss.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yes. I love this conversation. So many people, the entry point into health and fitness is almost always done through the lens of fat loss and weight loss. And as we mentioned, there's certain people that argue that fat loss and weight loss is health, but not always. You mentioned, like, when you looked your best, you felt your worst. So there's an obvious disconnect, and we know this. At the very beginning of my career, I was a weight loss and a fat loss coach. And it got to the point where my clients, women, were coming in and saying how good they felt. And I've never felt better. I feel amazing. I'm stronger than ever. Like, doing a really cool stuff with their bodies that they never thought they could do before. Push-ups, pull-ups, deadlifts, whatever. Weigh-in day would come in. And it all went out the window. Like, we could have 30 seconds before they weighed themselves saying they've never felt better. We weigh them in and it's gone. And I'm like, if I could just remove this piece, what could be true? So I stopped selling and facilitating weight loss and fat loss. I believe that weight loss and fat loss should be explored after some very basic foundational pieces are happening. For example, one of the things that was on that post was, can you even identify a carbohydrate? Can you even identify a protein source? Can you identify a fat source? A lot of people can't, Annette. Like, I will never forget. You don't know how many people have said, like, is avocado protein? Like, I had some avocado protein. I'm like, oh
dear.
Shit.
Peanut butter too. Peanut butter's a protein.
It's not. Exactly. So we're setting, as professionals, I feel that we are doing some disservice when we are incorporating a lot of the detail and the minutia of, like, count your fat grams. Do they even know what a fat is, though? And can we remove some of the pressure of, I'm going to fuck this up. I overate my macros. Can we just have the people explore, like, oh my gosh, yes, I am more comfortable in identifying what a fat is versus a protein. We have to be familiar enough with that language before we head into the minutia and the calculation of, like, subtract this and plus this and whatever. Fat loss, in my mind, at least where I'm at in my career now, is like the last stop that we explore on the train versus the first place that we explore.
And the thing that I thought of while you were talking is a lot of personal trainers are pro weight loss because it's an easy place to be. It's a sexy place to be. That's what people think they want. And so they're going to try to find that trainer that will give them what they want. And it's harder to be the responsible person that says, hold up, maybe this isn't the place. It's harder. You have to be more knowledgeable. You have to have a broader skill set, I think.
Yes. Well, because fat loss is really easy to sell.
Yeah.
It's super easy to sell. And it's hard to sell, like, don't you want to get educated about carb sources? Like, most people don't want to do that. So from a business perspective, it's a great vetting tool. I'll say that much.
Yeah. And were there other aspects to it? They have to be able to identify the macronutrients, but was there some consistency they had? I can't remember.
Yes. Some of the other things that particular post had mentioned, before you head into a fat loss phase, 7 to 9 hours of sleep every single night. I know that is a subject over here. You have to be sleeping well. Sleep is a huge foundational piece for anything. You want to get stronger, you need to sleep. You want to look better, you need to sleep. So can we focus on building the habit of sleep without being taunted by the scale at the same time? That's a lot of stuff to have to manage. So let's get your sleep down pat first. Okay. Second one, are you moving? Moving is not fitness. It's different. So I come at this, so I always say, are you a glorified couch potato? Like I used to be. I would just, like, go to CrossFit and be done because I did my workout already.
Right.
Are you moving? Are you getting up and getting off your ass multiple times a day? Does your life require movement? Like, that's a big one. NEAT, huge component to fat loss and weight loss. Fitness. Are you participating in fitness on a regular basis? I think the post even said for a full year. Like, are you participating in these things that are often delivered to us through the lens of fat loss without the lens of fat loss? Because if you want to be truly successful at losing weight, it's the behaviors that will yield that. So let's remove this really sexy result of the weight loss. Do you give enough of a shit to do this boring ass shit so long that then we can focus on fat loss? Most people are going to bounce.
And I think that's part of the reason Christina does not take new clients and new members of her barbell collective for, is it like the whole month of January?
Yeah, I don't accept new fitness clients in January.
Because of that same reason. She's not looking for the quick fix people that are making a resolution.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to start wrapping up. I have just one more question. Christina and I love to eat at Crusade Burger. And so, Christina, tell me about, how do you apply your protein, carb, something to make it taste good produce at Crusade Burger?
You know what? And that, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. I kind of don't. Like, we go what? How often do we go?
Once a quarter. I'd like it to be more often.
Me too.
Yeah.
But we also said we were going to try a new place.
Yeah.
So for things like that, we go so infrequently that, like, if I have, and this is a thing, like, I'm not, this is just how I exist in the world. Remember I said 90% consistent? So, like, I get, what do I usually get? Mac and cheese.
Salad and mac and cheese.
So even, that's just not even necessarily an intention of like, I must get the salad. I genuinely love eating
really
salad.
Good.
So typically I think what you're referencing is almost always we either split a salad or get our own. And then I get usually some sort of mac and cheese.
But with a protein usually.
Always with a protein. Yeah. Well, usually. But like, even if I would have just gotten a burger and a salad, there's protein on there. There's carbs on there. And once a quarter, like, my body will handle it. It'll figure it out. So that I think is a little bit more fluid. You know what I mean? But man, that's so good there.
I look forward to our
If we were
meals.
eating there on a regular basis, I would totally have a different approach.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
You know?
I agree. Well, here's the part of the podcast where I say either, was there something that we should have talked about that we didn't, or do you have any parting advice for my firefighter listeners? The mic is yours.
Listen to Annette. They don't need to hear anything from me. They got to listen to you, sister.
That's great advice. I love that. Well, Christina, thank you so much for your time and your energy. This woman, like I said, is a dynamo. She's super fun, and I love her to pieces. So thank you. And with that, AZ and Christina Montalvo are officially out.